Hey everyone, Alistair here. Hope you're doing okay. The summer months are upon us, which means two things. I need to wear more hats, and this is the part of our year when costs are high and support tends to dip. We know, believe me, things are tight everywhere at the moment, and unfortunately, that includes us. For those of you who support us already, thank you so much. We hope you're enjoying the great new Cats Cast episodes and all the pseudopod extrusions. If you don't support us but you would like to join them, we've got tons of options for you at both Patreon and PayPal. Even a one-off at Ko-fi makes a big difference. Or, if you're in the market for some sweet new summer wardrobe, we have a new swag store, courtesy of our amazing friends over at Void Merch, and the t-shirts are unbelievably great. It all adds up, it all helps. And it all helps us bring you the best in free audio fiction every week. So, if you can help out, please do. And thanks. And do enjoy this week's episode.
PodCastle, episode 744. For Tuesday the 19th of July 2022. A double feature episode comprising I Will You Back to Time and Space by Devin McKim and The Ocean-Eyed Boy by Timothy Mudi. Rated PG-13. Good morning, good day, good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to PodCastle, the flying castle of fantasy fiction. I'm your host, Matt Dovey, and I'm delighted to present, for your enjoyment, a double feature episode. These stories are rated PG-13, and there's a content note for the loss of a child. First up, we have I Will You Back to Time and Space, written by Devin McKim and narrated by Alistair Stewart. The story was first published by Flash Fiction Online in 2018. Devin McKim is a speculative fiction writer producing mainly short and flash-length stories. His work has appeared in publications such as Deep Magic, Daily Science Fiction, Flash Fiction Online, Kaleidotrope and elsewhere. He was born and grew up in Wales, but now lives in Taipei, Taiwan. You can find him online at www.davidmckim.com. Alistair Stewart is a professional enthusiast, pop culture analyst, writer and voice actor. He co-owns the Escape Artist podcast and co-hosts both Escape Pod and Pseudopod. Alistair is an Audioverse Award winner, a multiple award finalist including the Hugo, the Ignite and the BFA, and has won the Carl Edward Wagner Award twice. He writes the multiple award-nominated weekly pop culture newsletter, The Full Lid. Alistair's latest non-fiction is Through the Valley of Shadows, a deep dive into the origins of Star Trek's Captain Pike from Obverse Books. His game writing includes ENI-nominated work on the Doctor Who RPG and After the War from Genesis of Legend. A frequent podcast guest, Alistair also co-hosts Caring Into the Void with Brock Wilbur and Jordan Shively. His voice acting credits include the multiple award-winning The Magnus Archives, The Secrets of St Kilda and many more. Visit Alistair Stewart for all the places he blogs, writes, streams, acts and tweets. And now pay attention, for our tale is about to begin, and the world is about to change.
I Will You Back to Time and Space by Devin McKim. Read by Alistair Stewart. You are 10 years unborn on the evening of the day that will soon become known as G-Day. I am washing dishes in the kitchen of our newly bought terrace, cleaning the residue of dinner from our finest boot sale porcelain. I bring 2 glasses of wine over to the sofa, where your mother is yawning contentedly, and I touch my glass gently to hers. The clink sings through the stuffy air. Cheers, fellow homeowner, I say. Your mother grins, takes a sip of her wine, then her eyes focus on something behind me, and her glass falls, and she screams, and I turn to see them for the first time. 2 hulking things. Arms thick as tree trunks, barrel-chested, those beetle-browed primate eyes focused so intensely on us. I shout, I curse, I push your mother back, my head ringing like the resounding clink of the wine glasses, but an alien moment ago. Soon enough, we find out the gorillas aren't just there for the two of us. They're everywhere, following every living person. And they're here to stay. Everyone has a different theory about what exactly the gorillas are. Outward manifestations of our souls, angels watching but forbidden by laws of free will to interact. According to one TV physicist, the gorillas are higher dimensional beings that manifest for some reason in our space-time continuum as great apes. Each person's gorilla is like a fingerprint. Mine, whom I call Gordon, is a smaller than average silverback, with a forehead as dark and cracked as a loaf of overbaked sourdough. Your mother's, Celine, is a pot-bellied female with warm, caramel-coloured eyes and a white moon-shaped patch above her brow ridge. Whatever they are, we soon get used to their perpetual presence, their inscrutable stares. After all, what's one more form of surveillance in this day and age? For years, life goes on. Our joys and sorrows no less intense for being watched over by the hyper-apes. The tears your mother and I cry over not being able to conceive are no less bitter. The toll of fertility treatments no less destructive, almost but not quite tearing us apart. The joy when we finally see those two blue lines is no less wondrous, and the embrace we share, pressing that pregnancy test between us, is no less an outpour of all our pent-up hopes that everything will surely be all right. It's a Wednesday in the March of G10 when you come into the world, screaming your woeful head off like any other Wednesday's child. Your mother and I cannot stop grinning like two mad fools. But our grins fade as the realization seeps through the room, permeating each of us. The nurses, the midwife, in turn, Gordon and Celine, are present, as always, but a third gorilla, one that should be yours, is nowhere in sight. They probe your little body as if you're something from another planet. They map your neural activity, scrutinize your biochemistry. When you're older, they measure your IQ, ink blot you until your eyes ache, perform every kind of exam imaginable, hoping to find some glitch in your makeup that will explain why you lack what every other living person has. They find only that you are a sweet, smarter-than-average girl who likes making collages and reading Roald Dahl books. We try to keep prying eyes at bay, but short of locking you indoors, we cannot keep you away from the whispers that follow you wherever you go. Your lack of a watcher, like a beacon drawing the world's attention. And its judgment. When you ask us why you don't have a gorilla, we give you a plush one instead, and you clutch it to you as if nothing has ever fulfilled you more. Every day, every single day, I pray for just one other person to be born without a watcher, but you remain alone. More so, with every day that passes. I see it. I see that swelling loneliness as you sit by the window, clutching Charlie, your toy gorilla, watching everyone walking by, accompanied. I see it opening up like a cabin inside of you, and I wonder if you'll ever feel you belong in this world, and what will happen when that loneliness overcomes you. It happens on a sunny afternoon, in June of G20, the air full of wildflowers and the drone of bees. We're homeschooling you, but you're 10 now, curious as a naturalist, and curiosity burns so fiercely at your age. So when I leave our books to make peanut butter sandwiches, out you go, sneaking like a fox into the fields, Charlie, your gorilla, tucked under your arm. What happens next, I can only guess. I imagine a crowd. Children who have grown up always knowing they're gorillas, knowing only that you were a freak for not having one. I see them tearing away Charlie. I see them ripping his head off, and I see them laughing as you scream. Imagine how intensely you must have yearned to disappear, and then, in a flash that fried every device for half a mile around, you were gone, leaving behind a tear in the universe, in the shape of a scared little girl. Your mother trolls the news every day, quietly hoping to find an extinction-level disaster, an asteroid hurtling unstoppable towards the Earth, a supervolcano, dead set on blowing us all to smithereens. So we're forced to go through that portal, forced to take that leap into the unknown, into some utopia where we can all live happily ever after, all thanks to you, all thanks to our misunderstood savior. Maybe it's the plan those apes who, when you disappeared, vanished too, had in mind all along. Well, I say fuck that. I say fuck all of it. I won't resign your fate to hopes and hunches. Because, you see, there is one thing I do know for sure. That in a world where gorillas can appear out of nowhere, and a little girl can will herself out of time and space, I, her father, can sure as hell will her back.
And welcome back. Let's get into the second story, then have our little discussion afterwards, for as you'll see, our editors are wise and have paired together two stories with much in common. The Ocean-Eyed Boy is written by Timothy Moody and narrated by Kyle Akers, and was previously published by Deep Magic in 2021. Timothy Moody is a speculative fiction writer and an editor of all sorts of genres. His fiction has appeared in various magazines, anthologies and podcasts, including Lightspeed, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Daily Science Fiction, Wasteland's New Apocalypse, and LeVar Burton Reads. He lives outside of Boston with his wife and 2 sons. Find him online at timothymoody.com or on Twitter at Timothy_Moody. Kyle Akers is a voice actor from Kansas City, Missouri. He has contributed to the No Sleep podcast, Pseudopod, Escape Pod, and Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, among many others. Prior to voice acting, Kyle toured the country as a professional musician, singing and playing bass guitar for the electro-pop band Antennas Up, which enjoyed success through several national television show placements and commercials. Since then, Kyle has dabbled in long-form improv and audio production, while performing weekend gigs with Kansas City cover band Magnetics. And now pay attention, for our tale is about to begin, and I'm afraid the responsibility will be all yours.
The Ocean-Eyed Boy by Timothy Moody. His parents don't name him the Ocean-Eyed Boy on the day he's born, but they could. When the mucus clears from his lungs, he squalls in chittering sing-song squeaks, like a dolphin greeting a podmate. Shell fragments appear in the meconium that stains his first diaper. His parents hold him and whisper sweet tones, stroking his downy head and kissing his wrinkled fingers. In his unfocused eyes, they see eddying currents, flickers of silver fins, the languid ripple of an octopus's tentacle. Mother and father murmur confusion to each other, which is quickly buried by the tidal wave of love and devotion that washes over them. While the mother sleeps and recovers from her labor, the father balances his son's head on his bare chest and makes him promises. I love you more than anything in this life, he says, and I will never let anything bad happen to you. And you are my son, and you are perfection. The Ocean-Eyed Boy opens his toothless mouth, and the sound that comes out is waves rushing across a pebbly seafloor. Graciously, the doctors allow the ocean-eyed boy's parents the night with their son before they collect him for tests. It's understandable that they would need to examine the boy. By all appearances, there seems to be an ocean where his brain should be. It would be inconceivable not to examine him. Clad in the same papery surgical scrubs that they wore while the baby was delivered, mother and father watch doctors poke and prod their son. The doctors shine lights into his eyes and peer at them, then repeat the process with mouth and nostrils. They draw blood from his rubber band-thick arms, swab saliva from a mouth emitting mournful whale song. They curl his body into a tiny C and insert a long needle between two vertebrae so they can draw spinal fluid. The boy's father and mother sob and gasp throughout the process, but neither reflects on the fact that their tears, too, are composed of salt water. For the first months of his life, the ocean-eyed boy lives in a series of hospitals. While his parents should be welcoming their son home in a sleep-deprived haze, changing diapers and checking the baby's breathing 20 times a night, and subsisting on dropped-off casseroles, they instead live in the hospital, eating bland cafeteria food and sleeping on a pull-out couch in a converted waiting room. They never wake feeling rested. They spend every minute they can watching their son, sitting next to his plastic bassinet and watching his little chest rise and fall. They hold him whenever they are allowed. They cringe at every invasive procedure that is performed, until the boy's mother can't take it anymore and begins to leave the room when the research doctors enter. The ocean-eyed boy's father refuses to leave, demands that he be allowed to bear witness to every indignity imposed upon his son. Eventually, the boy's parents push back enough and demand an end to the testing enough times that the researchers throw up their collective hands. The boy's head contains an ocean, seemingly boundless, utterly inexplicable. Talented as the scientists are, they reach limits of their exploratory abilities. When he's 3 months old, the ocean-eyed boy smiles for the first time. When he is 3 months old, his overjoyed and fearful parents finally bring him home. Because he was formula-fed for the first months of his life, the ocean-eyed boy does not breastfeed now. His parents take turns giving him his bottle every 3 hours. Sharks glide across his eyeballs as he suckles. Sperm whales battle giant squid in such intense displays that the boy's father gets distracted and lets the nipple fall from the boy's lips. Formula spills down his cheeks and onto the father's pants. The father mutters something that has the inflection of a curse but is not a word as he readjusts the bottle. When he looks back into his son's eyes, orcas sway by. What do these animals breathe, he wonders. Is there a surface to this ocean inside his son's head, where the sea mammals breach and replenish their oxygen? Will he ever get any answers? Will the ocean-eyed boy ever explain what he feels, what he sees, what he is? Will he ever be able to? Every time the ocean-eyed boy tries to coo at his father, the sound that comes out is bubbles popping. I don't think I'm bonding with him the way I should be, the ocean-eyed boy's mother says. There's no should be to it, his father replies. Parenthood is like love or faith in God. There's no set rules to how it unfolds. I don't think I'm bonding like I should be, the ocean-eyed boy's mother says. 2 years later, the ocean-eyed boy doesn't speak. At least not human words. If meaning resides behind his dolphin squeals and scuttling claw babbles, his father can't comprehend it. His mother no longer lives with them, rarely visits, and so doesn't have to worry about understanding or not. Every day, his father commutes to a large financial services company. His father can't leave him alone while he works, and so a succession of nurses spend their days caring for the boy, while his father drafts and proofreads all company emails about health insurance benefits and reminders of change to vacation time policy. During his lunch breaks, he jots novel ideas and character sketches into a spiral notebook. None of his premises are as interesting as a boy born with an entire ocean inside his skull. Back home, he feeds his son, talks to him about his day. During the hours alone together, the ocean-eyed boy's father performs a running monologue where he outlines his dreams of writing a book about a boy like his son and outlines his fears about the mounting medical and home care costs. When his father returns home, he often finds the various nurses staring into his son's eyes, mouths agape as they observe coelacanths and anglerfish and myriad bizarrely glowing deep-sea species. The spectacle is beautiful, but sometimes his father wishes the ocean-eyed boy's eyes were white and brown like his own. Every few months there are emails, or phone calls, or the occasional front step visitor offering his father a large cut of the profits they could make by displaying the boy to the public. For a very reasonable fee, gawkers would surely pay to gaze into the boy's eyes and view the wonders of the seas in close-up miniature. His father deletes the emails, hangs up the telephone, closes the front door in their faces. Bills mount. The ocean-eyed boy's medical concerns and complications are not the sort that health insurance covers. His father writes a book about the boy, about their life together, the triumphs and tribulations, how they communicate without words, how he truly believes that his son understands and loves him. Many of the literary agents that he submits to don't respond. One does, willing to take it on, though he argues it should be fully illustrated. It's really more of a visual story, don't you think? He says. His father says that to put his son on display like that would be exploitative. One publishing house makes an offer on the book. The advance covers 3 months of medical bills. The book fails to sell. The father never earns back his advance, and soon the book appears on discount tables. His father takes a second job, a third. He sells every one of his possessions that doesn't directly contribute to keeping his son's well-being. Weighs salaries against what he spends on home care for the ocean-eyed boy while he's working. The scales continue to tilt more dramatically, and never the way he wishes they would. When the next wave of emails and phone calls and visitors arrives, the father doesn't reject them out of hand. He'll hear what they have to say, he tells the ocean-eyed boy, just to keep his options open. They need the money, and as long as it's handled with dignity, it won't be so bad. Right? Popcorn, and flashing lights, and clanging bells. A carnival sprouts up inside a strip mall storefront that once housed a nail salon. Forever it will smell faintly of astringent polish remover. Crowds wind through roped lines to gawp at the ocean behind the ocean-eyed boy's eyelids. All day he stands stock still, eyes wide, while strangers pass by, each allotted 5 minutes per ticket, 2 at a time, 1 at each eye. Rarely they speak to him, giggling as he answers in sea robin barks or the clatter of lobster shells. His father observes all of this from a remove. He doesn't let himself think about what his son might be feeling as the endless customers parade by, oohing and awing about blue whales and great whites and manta rays and loggerhead turtles. At home, feeding his son, giving him baths, brushing his teeth, reading him stories, tucking him into bed, his father tries to avoid looking into his son's eyes. When he does, the magic seems diminished somehow, polluted. The ocean-eyed boy can't see into his own eyes. His father wonders what the boy sees when he glimpses them in the mirror. If he sees the same thing as everyone else, but it doesn't surprise or excite or baffle him. An ocean exists inside his head. Does the ocean-eyed boy understand what the big deal is? Eventually, no matter how astounding an attraction may be, its novelty and appeal fade. His father watches their savings dwindle. No matter how many extra hours he works, even when he takes a second job, the money flows out of his account as quickly as he can replenish it. Normally, a child of the ocean-eyed boy's age would be in kindergarten by now. Daycare costs would subside, but the ocean-eyed boy can't go to a traditional school. And when his father calls alternative and specialty schools and attempts to enroll him, they all make excuses for why they can't accommodate him. "You don't need school anyway," his father says to him while spoon-feeding him applesauce. What with all the schools swimming around inside your head? It's not often that his father jokes these days, and his father's sudden laughter surprises them both. His father puts down the spoon and holds the ocean-eyed boy's hands in his own. He kisses his son's palms. He cries and compliments overdraft fees and credit limits. "You are my son, and you are perfection," he says. "And I love you more than anything in this life. And I will never let anything bad happen to you. I will never let anything bad happen." "It won't hurt," his father tells the ocean-eyed boy. "All the doctors I've talked to promise me that it won't hurt." He doesn't mention that all of those doctors are on the payroll of the oil company that has licensed speculation and drilling rights in the boy's head. It pays more than the book sale and the ticket sales combined by several orders of magnitude. There's an entire ocean inside that head of his, they say. A thriving ecosystem. Think of the untapped resources, all the potential bottled up in that reality-defying skull. Why, there must be a floor to that ocean, and who knows what lies below that. Maybe it will even help him. Maybe the water and seaweed and countless fish will all drain out. Maybe after this the ocean-eyed boy will be normal. The ocean-eyed boy doesn't know whether there is a floor, or if the ocean goes on forever. Neither does his father. All the hours he spent staring at his son, and he's never seen anything that implies there's a limit to the water inside the boy's head. It seems to him that he's never spotted the same fish or whale twice. A jellyfish floats through the boy's right pupil, trailing tentacles like crepe birthday party streamers. "Hey, where's the peanut butter fish?" his father jokes, his voice straining not to crack. The ocean-eyed boy doesn't groan at the terrible pun because he can't. His father breathes slowly so he won't cry. Soon the doctors will come into the surgical theater, flanked by speculators and geologists and men whose specialties lie not in medicine, but in sniffing out profit. His father's cut will provide for the ocean-eyed boy to live out his life as happily and comfortably as possible, even when his father is no longer around to take care of him. The ocean-eyed boy's father swears he will do anything for his son. Apparently this something means going against every instinct in his body. Sometimes it means shattering his own heart. His father has the option of watching the procedure, and he fully intends to do so. They won't let him stand with his son and hold his hand, but he can observe from outside the room as doctors insert a thin, flexible carbon silicone tube through the boy's tear duct and plumb the depths of his skull. He can't do it. While doctors prep the ocean-eyed boy for his surgery, his father paces the hallway. He hasn't heard from the boy's mother in years, but he wishes she were there with him now. Wishes that the boy had doting grandparents, or a kindly uncle, or someone, anyone, who could be there for support. All these years, it has only ever been the ocean-eyed boy and his father. What comes next? After this, what will his father allow people to do to the ocean-eyed boy? What compromises will he make with his conscience? How much must he betray his son? What promises will he have to break next? He can't do it. The ocean-eyed boy lies strapped to a surgical table when his father bursts into the operating theater, loudly demanding that the oil company paid doctors and spectating surgical residents and everyone else cease what they're doing. That he's changed his mind. That he is taking his son and they are going home. The doctors ignore him and plunge the thin, flexible carbon silicone tube into the boy's head. A drop of water squirts out. A trickle. A stream. A deluge. An ocean. It never stops. When the doctors puncture the ocean-eyed boy's eye, it releases the ocean inside his head, and everything inside spills out. Humpback whales and hammerhead sharks, catfish and dogfish, plankton and krill, aholehole and zebrafish. They gush from his skull and expand to their full size, swimming away in the water that flows out the door. His father holds the ocean-eyed boy close as waters rise over them, as the boy's ocean enfolds them both. The ocean-eyed boy's father whispers to his son, I love you more than anything in this life. I am sorry for the bad things that I brought to you. I will never let anything bad happen to you again. You are my son, and you are perfection. In the ocean that spans the globe, there are countless sea creatures, more species of fish than there are names for them. There is one ocean-eyed boy. There is one father, floating together in the middle of a warm and boundless ocean.
And welcome back. Timothy sent us these notes on the story. This story actually began life years ago as a children's book, where it had a very different, much more upbeat plot. Years later, I wondered whether it could be repurposed as an adult story. After having my first son, and dealing with some medical issues over the first couple of years of his life, the story coalesced into what it is now. Thank you, Timothy, and David too, for the stories. These are a powerful pair, wonderfully matched. It's often said that becoming a parent changes the way you think. That is quite literal, and there's multiple studies demonstrating hormonal and structural changes in the childbearing parent's brain. More than that, there's a 2014 paper from the universities of Denver and Yale that showed the other parent also experiences increased neural growth in specific areas of the brain and shrinkage in others. Our brains are re-architected by the experience of caring for a small human, and the people we are after are not the same as the people we were before. These two hit particularly hard for me given the non-conformity of the children in each story. I've spoken before about both my sons being autistic, and I put so much time and energy into fighting the local education system for my youngest in particular that it contributed to a burnout and breakdown for me across 2021. That desperate urge to do anything for the sake of your kids in Ocean-Eyed Boy is, well, I could relate. And the pain of seeing the world recognise your child as different and treating them with fear and suspicion, as in I will you back to time and space, even as you know that difference, while real, does not make them any lesser, any less precious, any less wonderful. Yep, I got that in droves too. Both these sentiments are elevated too by having realised myself that I'm autistic, and so knowing that if only the world would make a space for them as it makes space for anyone else, if only it would take the time to know and understand and love them as I do, if only it would understand that difference is not a value judgment, they would thrive and help the world thrive, and we'd all be richer for it. But the world isn't like that, at least not yet. The world is still cruel and hard and suspicious. I feel like I often end these outros with a pretty generic call to action, but this time it's a very specific plea. Please, make the world a kinder place for my kids to grow into. They do not need to be outsiders. They just need people to decide to accept them, instead of fear what they don't understand. You have more power than you know to influence the people around you, and spread kindness and love. Please, do your best. That was our show for this week. On behalf of everyone at PodCastle, your co-editors Shingai and Jerry Kugunda and Eleanor R. Wood, assistant editor Sophie Barker, audio engineers Devin Martin and Eric Valdez, forum moderator Ossicat, and our many wonderful first readers, Aidan Doyle, Craig Jackson, Amalia Harrington, Hamilton Perez, Julia Patt, Caitlin Zavanovich, Kieran Korsaini, Ryan Cole, Sarah S. Messenger, Shrikripa Krishna Prasad, Tarvanova, Tierney Bailey, Zeev Wheaties, and myself, Matt Dovey. Thank you for letting us share another story with you. The legal bit. PodCastle is part of Escape Artists Incorporated, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. That means you can share it, and please do, but you cannot sell it and you cannot change it. If you want specifics, check creativecommons.org. Our music is by Shiva in Exile. Everything we do on PodCastle is 100% donor funded, and if you'd like to support what we and the rest of EA do, please join us on our Patreon at patreon.com/EA podcasts. Prefer another method? There's details for supporting us via Twitch, Amazon Prime, Ko-fi and PayPal on escapeartists.net. We'll be back next Tuesday with another fantastic tale. In the meantime, you might care to check our sister podcasts, Escape Pod for science fiction, Pseudopod for horror, and Cast of Wonders for YA speculative fiction. If your heart belongs to us, though, we'll see you next week. Be safe and be kind.